Hey, I am live. It's the Nazarite renew Hebrew lore from days of yore, right here in Yerushalayim. I've got Robert here in the house. Hey, Robert, how you doing? I'm happy to hear things are going well with you. Here in Jerusalem and in all over different places in Israel, it's snowing. Every now and then we'll have a snow. It's not supposed to be a major storm, but it probably will stick at least until tomorrow, noonish or later morning when the sun is shining more brightly. But real fluffy flakes are falling out there now, and it's lovely to behold. So I'm going to continue the chat from Monday, and I'm having a bit of issues with the live chat replay, so I'll get into that whenever. I'll try and do what I can here. So at the time we were having a lot of different discussions here. My boy was there, Robert was there, Yodidia was there, little Andre, Spooky was there, and S.E. Hall, the Nazarene Nazarite. So S.E. Hall, I'm continuing the chat from Monday, and he said to little Andre, anything that is truly existent. No, you know what? I'll preface it by saying that we were talking about that line, if it can be perceived, then it's not God. Right? I was talking about how I don't know God, and all I know is how God reveals himself to me. Different people were chiming in there. Little Andre said something regarding the truth. I don't recall because I can't see it right now. And again, the chat from Monday is giving me a bit of trouble. But S.E. Hall says to the little Andre, anything that is truly existent emanates from the truth. Nothing can truly exist and be true apart from the self-existent truth. So I was talking about how, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many others, there is a real break between creator and creation, a gap that cannot be managed, at least in this insufficient form, right? And we have Torah and we have commandments and we have different things to cleanse and purify and create that vessel. And there is still always going to be some kind of a break between creator and creation. And so S.E. Hall said to little Andre that nothing is truly existent, nothing that truly exists emanates from truth. Wait, anything, things that do it, so nothing that can truly exist is apart from the self-existent truth. So S.E. Hall kind of equates like God with truth, right, as an absolute concept, as an absolute being, right? And he says that nothing but that can really exist. Anything that is truly existent emanates from the truth. So that calls into question, what does it mean to truly exist? Because so long as we are in this life, on this earth, we perceive things with our senses, right? And it's basically all that give and take between our bodies, our minds, and the outside world. There's everything, right? And we have the spectrum of what we can see and hear and taste and touch and feel and smell, and we have things that are beyond that spectrum, and we work in a way in order to widen our spectrum of understanding, of perception. All right. Karen said, Oregon Freeburn said, this chat has been very entertaining today. Thanks for the laughs, everyone. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I was on for 2 hours before that, and it was such a blast. I mean, 2 hours before, that is on Monday. It was such a blast. Ariel says, not sure I know how to better explain my last comment, little Andre. Do you take the biblical creation story as a literal timeline, may I ask? Okay. Robert said, being vegetarian for 3 weeks ain't really all that bad. Right. So, Robert, by the way, so Robert, I think you're here now. Are you still vegetarian? When is that going to end? And your woman, what? She's abstaining from sugary drinks, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. Spooky said, answering S.E. Hall, he said, God is not just a truth, which would just be a fact, but is rather the very essence and source of all truth, which man cannot ever fully understand, little Andre. Okay, so he was responding to little Andre. So again, there was probably something that little Andre said before in the chat, obviously, which maybe I'll be able to locate it. Let's see for a second. Let's see if I'll be able to locate it. Okay, so little Andre said, of course, he, referring to God, he is a truth, but I'm not sure if he himself is truth, which is a concept. Okay, so in that comment, little Andre sort of differentiates a truth from kind of absolute truth, right? And that's what S.E. Hall and Spooky were responding to right there. So Spooky says something along the lines of, "It cannot be fully grasped and understood by man," which I agree with, basically. I agree with. On the other hand, as I've said many times before, if the king shows up at your home, he gives you a hug, right? And you embrace each other. Despite the king wearing clothing, and despite there being something coming in between of you and the king, in the sense of the garments, would anyone doubt that you are actually embracing the king, right? So I think that you would be hard pressed to find someone who would say, no, 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 you didn't embrace the king. You were embracing the king's clothing. It's like, no, the king is dressed in those clothing, in that clothing, in those garments, even though there was a kind of divide between myself and the king, we were both embracing each other, and anyone with a bit of sense would say, yes, you and the king embraced, and the fact that the king was clothed is kind of incidental, right? It's not the main focus and it's not the main issue. Though on the other hand, no one would doubt that you didn't truly, truly see the king. You saw the king in his physical form, if you will, as a body, clothed in garments. So you experienced the king without seeing and experiencing him fully, let's say. And to make it the analogy even more, to give it a bit more substance, you're not, let's say, the queen who gets to know the king physically in that sense, right? With no clothes on. There are more external unions like that kind of an embrace, and there are deeper unions like that of the king and the queen together in the middle of lovemaking. And so they embrace here and they embrace there, but it's a different sort of embrace because of the circumstances and because of the, let's say, lack of garments. There's always going to be some sort of filter. All right, let's see. So Yodidiao says to Robert, my Chick-fil-A chicken is a vegan. Okay, so the chicken is a vegan, or it's vegan chicken? Because I don't know Chick-fil-A. I've never had Chick-fil-A. I've never tasted it, nor have they seen their menu. Spooky said to little Andre, the best man can do is try to walk in truth towards the truth. Right, I'm inclined to agree with that. And as you move towards that goal, that ideal, it keeps moving further and further away because there is always more and more that you can do, always more that you can learn, always a truer path to walk, because we are by definition, or what some would claim, we are by definition as human beings faulty and fragile and uh, basically full of flaws. So that absolute, that is truth, is not something we can actually get to. But in striving towards it and in moving towards it, despite the ideal moving away, we get truer and truer as we go along. And we embody truth in the way that we conduct ourselves in the world and the way that we treat each other as we go along. So let's see. Spooky, what? Okay, Little Andre says to Didiao, haha, I get your humor now. Well, okay, I guess he's responding either to something else or to that chicken vegan thing. I guess I had to be there at the time to see the progression of the chat, but I'm reading things kind of retroactively, even during the actual broadcast, as you know, because things come in and I'm reading them kind of backwards or retroactively. Congratulations, Robert, says Spooky on the 3 weeks without meat, with many of fruit emojis. And my boy, who was there at the time, said, I'm so tired, but I want to listen. Oh, God bless that kid. God bless that kid. He is, Jamal in the last broadcast, he asked me about raising kids in Torah, right, and in ritual, private and public, and in prayers and blessings. And one thing that's very fundamental that I kind of didn't phrase that way, although he understood it from what I was saying, and this question is one I addressed in the past with him as well. But many times, and from what I know, you lead by example. And many, many times, from what I've heard from parents who have older kids, Yeah, and I know from my experience, a lot of the times the kids will remember the way that you were and not necessarily what you said here or there. But I've mentioned this in the past. I'm sure that there are certain utterances and things that I spoke that will be kind of lodged in their brain long term, for better or worse. But overall, in the grand scheme of life and the unfolding and ongoing narrative that is the life of my kids, I think, based on my experience and on again different things, talks I've had, what they will be remembering and what they will be really taking in and imbibing, for lack of a better term, is the general mode of being of their father and their mother in the house, outside of it. You lead by example. How do I behave? What is it that I do? How is it that I'm what is it that I'm conveying passively, simply by doing whatever I'm doing? And I have no doubt that my kids, when they see, for instance, that there's a Torah on the dining table on a regular basis, that's where it lives. And there's a Torah in their father's backpack, and that's where that one lives. And there's a Torah or two on the shelf, and there are different books, and they see us learning, and they see that Hebrew way of life that I at least am trying to the best of my ability to again embody and live out in the world, in the home, and outside of it. That is what they are going to get. I think that a lot more than me saying do this or do that, it's going to be how did Abba behave? What is it that father and mother did? How did they treat themselves? How did they treat each other? What is it that was important to them? You know? And this is very nuanced and subtle sometimes because it's not something necessarily that is explicit, it is implicit. And maybe so it should be. It should probably be both. But when I read something like this, I'm so tired, but I want to listen. That's what my boy said. And I go, toda leya, right? Thank God. It's so wonderful to have your crown prince want to be involved. And I know that many fathers experience this with their younger boys. And then at some point in puberty, there starts to be a break where they want to discover their own thing. And I just am thanking God because even though it's a given, a boy wants to be like his father, to some degree it's very it has nothing to do with anything, it's just the way of the world. But I read something like this, that he's very tired but he wants to listen, and I go, it's such a blessing. Let's see. Robert says to the Nazarene Nazarite, what town in Mississippi are you in? All right, I'm sure he'll answer him soon. Yodidiaus said to little Andre, yes, little Andre, I eat chicken with pepper jack cheese. I'm not sure what that is, but it sounds yummy. Little Andre says Elohim is not merely a concept, is all I'm saying. Yes. It's not a concept like truth, which is a concept and an abstract. It's more than that because we can kind of define, at least in a way, what is true and what is false by our own definitions. But you can't necessarily define what Elohim is. You usually can define Elohim by what he is not, right? Taking the negative. S.E. Hall said, hey, Robert, I'm in. Hey, guy. I'm in Hattiesburg for the moment. Probably going to head through New Orleans once the winter is over. New Orleans, Louisiana. That's a place, huh? I hear they have some wild parties. Little Andre said to Karen, thank praise, yeah. Spooky said, aha, wow, removed the filters. Amazing. So, yeah, removing the filters. That's what I was talking about at the time. And, excuse me? No, no, baby, no. It's time for bed. Spooky says, ah, yes, a vessel for the water of life. Beautiful. Right, to create a vessel. And as the Tao Te Ching, right, Lao Tzu, he says, if you remain empty, you will always be full. Because life and that energy, that flow of life will be flowing through you continuously. And you won't be stopping it, right? It will always be renewing itself through you. If you remain empty, always, you'll remain full. If you are old, you will remain new. If you bow yourself and are humble, you will remain upright and righteous. So, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, right? I want to listen, Dad, said my boy. Little Andre said literal timeline, as in the whole Bible narrative timeline. So, yeah, so Spooky asked little Andre if he considers the story of creation to be, right, A, B, C, D in a narrative. Now, obviously, there is a narrative, but whether or not it was a timeline, that's Guy, you're in the middle right now, and no, you may not. No, you may not. I see what you're saying, little Andre, said Spooky. And my boy said to Jesus, yes, I heard a lot of swear words in the Netherlands. Yes, I undoubtedly he did. But right along with that, he knows that at home, it's usually not how we behave. Laila Tov, have a good night, boys, sweet dreams. Ariel, right, which is why, like I said, I'm not hiding him away from the world. I'm not hiding the world away from him. And if necessary, right, if he encounters something, I'll be glad to be very forthcoming about it. But I also want to make it age appropriate to the best of my ability. So it's a line that's very it's dynamic, right? These are moving goalposts. As he ages and grows and matures, so does his capacity to understand. Okay, let's see. Ariel Marshall says, if so, then do you think Gan Eden, God gave Adam the first Torah teaching guidance in written form? Wait, so let's see. Oh, so I probably missed something that Ariel said before. Let me see if I can find it over here. Ariel said, no, oh, so he's talking to little Andre. And he says, do you take the biblical creation story as the literal timeline? And then he said, if so, if it is a literal timeline for little Andre, if so, then do you think in Gan Eden God gave Adam the first Torah teaching in written form? Okay, so Ariel asked little Andre if he does think that the story of creation was a linear sort of narrative. Did the first Torah and teaching or guidance arrive in written form? All right, I wonder what little Andre will respond there. Well, we'll see what he responds. Robert says, Jonathan is wearing 3 crowns. Well, thanks for that, Robert. I appreciate the good vibes. I really do. I'm certainly striving to merit the crown, if not actually wear it. I'll leave it at that. Spooky likes little Andre, give him a green heart. Robert says, Jesus, you're near the Nether. And Jesus says, hi, I live in Belgium, so I know a thing or two about our northern neighbors, right? About the Netherlands. Andre says, Daniel, je praat Nederlands, recht? You speak Dutch, right? But Didier said, Jonathan is a homo sapien. Yes, I am, a thinking man. And there, I'm also, I try to be a homofaber, which is a creating man. My boy said to little Andre, didn't see that he deleted Dad's channels. Okay, I'm not mistaken. And yes, he does speak Dutch, he answered him. Okay. Robert, what do you mean by 3 crowns? Asked little Andre. Spooky says, Parlez-vous français ou allemand, Jesus? The Didier said to little Andre, can I have a milkshake with my vegan chicken sandwich? Why, yes, you could, if it's a vegan one and if you want to keep kosher. Daniel, oh, I see. Little Andre says, yes, he does speak a little bit of French. Ik wil slapen, said my boy, I want to sleep. Little Andre told him, slapen maar. Sleep, but? Is that what that means? I know that mar means but. Jesus says to Spooky, not really. So he doesn't really speak it. Un petit peu, mais pas trop, pas du tout. All right, so he speaks only a little bit himself as well. Robert says, a crown of Torah written, crown of Nazarite, and crown of Levite, and he wants prophecy crown. Well, I'm not wearing those crowns, I guess. The only crown that I would want to wear is one of humility. As far as I'm concerned, it encompasses the Torah and the Nazariteship and the Levitical covenant and the gift of prophecy. It all comes through humility. So yeah, I'd like to. I'd really like to. But well, let's put it that way. Yeah, not the hair right now is enough for me. All right, and now they're speaking French and Dutch, and I'm not going to read it right now because I would butcher it and not exactly know what they're saying. So Daniel, my boy, says, I'm not so good, but I want to sleep and listen. Okay. As they all said to little Andre, not going that direction, unfortunately. Oh, okay. And then they're speaking more French. And my boy said, Abba, can I come to the vid, please? My boy wanted to come and and be part of the video, to which I said no. I mean, I'm saying it now. I didn't see it then. I told him no now, and now I just read what he read on Monday. He really wants to show up. At some point, I will. But you know what? This is what I told him when he came to me after. Why didn't you let me? I said I care about your privacy, and he said I don't care about the privacy. I said give it a few years. You might actually care about your privacy. So I think I'm doing right by him, not wanting him to join the live stream, but we'll see. Landre says, I forgot what listen is in German. Oh, so they were speaking German, French, and Dutch. All right. Robert says, cussing is bad, folks. Haha. Spooky said, I like that song Engel by Rammstein. You know, I didn't give Rammstein enough of a shot. I've listened to some of their singles, and anytime they were on the radio, but other than that, I didn't really listen to them for any kind of full length album or live. I probably should. S.E. Hall says, I have to disagree because the Bible, both Old Testament and New Testament, the Bible makes it clear that God can be known. But I get what you are saying. Yeah, I mean, he can be known insofar as we are limited. And so he can be known on a limited basis. And if he is known on a limited basis, it means that you are knowing him through that limitation. And if you know him through that limitation, then it is not God, which is limitless, right? If we say that we know God through the divine names and utterances and the mindfulness and connecting through Torah commandments and covenant, and in doing so we reveal the Most High in the world and that divine influence, it means that there is a kind of connection. But the connection is through revelations, and what we are connecting is a revelation. So when he says, let's say, okay, the Bible makes it clear that God can be known, right? God can be known through the divine names. God can be known through all of the filters, much like the sun, right? The sun can be known. But how can we know the sun? We can know the sun, from 8 light minutes away, right? If we were closer than that or further away from that, the earth could not exist in the way that it is and would not be conducive to life as we know it. Meaning we had to be precisely in this distance, right? More being more proximal or whatever, that wouldn't be conducive to life. We wouldn't not be able to bear the sun if we were closer. So you need to have the filter of distance. Second of all, we need to have the filter taking the sun as as a great source of light, right? To compare it as an analogy to the divine light, right? To divinity itself, if you will, as God. Furthermore, we need to have the different layers of the atmosphere, the different spheres that and the different filters that literally go around the earth in order for the sunlight to disperse. Third, if we can't even from here with the 8 light minutes of distance and with the different filters around the earth itself, we still can't look directly in the sun from the ground. We need to have more filters like sunglasses or like undeveloped film, right? I'm thinking like in the 80s and 90s. We need to have some sort of filter between us and the sun. We cannot look directly at it, we will go blind. So in that way, we here on earth, we know the sun. We know the sun because we see the main source of light as a bright ball, when that's actually not exactly the way it goes down. The sun spreads its light all over the planet, right? All over the planet to which it's turned, right? If the planet is facing the sun basically influences the entire half of the planet, but we only see it as a small ball, if you will, where there is the most concentration of light. So even that is not exactly seeing the sun as is. We are looking at it as it was in the past 8 minutes ago. We are looking at it through filters of the atmosphere and so on, and we are looking at it through the filters of, let's say, sunglasses or different types of things, of barriers that make the sun's light visible and bearable and conducive to life. So in that sense, yeah, you do know God like we know the sun. If I were to come close to the sun and be very close to it, it would suck me in with its gravitational pull, and I'd be burned to a crisp way before I reached the surface, way before I reached its, what is it, helium and hydrogen, right? That's the core of our star. Is it helium and hydrogen? Anyway, where the nuclear fusion is happening. Yes, I think it's helium and hydrogen. At any rate, I wouldn't be able to reach the core of the sun in my current form. Much in the same way, I cannot reach the core of God in my current form. So there are filters and barriers and different things to make it not only bearable but conducive to life. So let's see, let's see. Jesus says, "I had to learn in school, but forgot a lot." Right, speaking of French and German and Dutch there. Spooky says, "I see what you are saying, Jonathan. This concept of the revelation of God being just that, a revelation, and not actually God, or even an aspect of God, is very interesting." Yes, I concur. I think that this is the end of the chat. Hang on. Is there anything else? Yes. Berlandre says, "Jonathan, you mentioned once that he has a desire to be on. Let him come on if he wants to and if it's okay with you." Oh, okay, so that's basically what I was saying now. I will have my boy on, but it will have to be later. I value his privacy. And these things, unless YouTube decides to give me the axe again, these things are on here. You know what they say? Once it's on the internet, it's there forever. So I want to be more mindful and thoughtful of my kids, plural, who are still relatively young, and I wouldn't want to compromise. I wouldn't want to compromise anything. All right, I'll read one or two comments, and then I'll go to the chat if it has been unfolding. I don't know. I haven't seen it, but let's see. Craig Leese, just a couple of hours ago, he left this comment talking about Shabbat. "I heard Eitan Katz, I think that's his name, he says, say in one of his gatherings, take a minute to wish yourself a deep Shabbat Shalom. I just love that idea. And so we have kind of incorporated it into our Friday night Shabbat meal. As we sit down," said Craig, "we stop for a moment, be still, and wish ourselves a Shabbat Shalom as we calm our week down, and then we wish each other before continuing with the rest of the blessings and the songs," which is a lovely, lovely ritual and tradition for that, for the family. I think it's lovely. And I answered him in the comment, we do the same thing basically after candle lighting, and I also do it after we sanctify by breaking bread, right? And we recite the Kiddush and we break bread. And then I give my boys their Shabbos blessing and my woman. So we kind of have the same thing. And to ease into the Shabbos and have, I love the idea of a deep Shabbat. That's wonderful. I'm gonna definitely be thinking about that more. Shabbat has such depth. It reaches back into the very origins of creation, which is why in the Kiddush, when we sanctify the Sabbath, we say it is a memory of the works of creation. Zikaron lema'aseh Bereshit, a memory of the doings of Bereshit, of Genesis, because it reminds us of our Genesis and of where we come from and where we're going. Right? Shabbat is our past and present and future in different forms. One more from Craig, and then I'll get to the chat. "Really enjoying listening to these dialogues. Not always able to watch live and join in the chat, but I watch the replay in parts between classes. Sometimes takes 2 or 3 days to get through the whole thing, but so enjoy rewinding to rehear certain comments as I muse over the thoughts presented. Thanks again," he says, "for all of your effort and setting up this hub for us to all connect through." Well, you people, Craig and the others, I mean, who's here? Let's quickly go through the chat. I see Ariel here. Andre is here. I see who else? Who else? Is that it? I think those are people in the chat right now. Yep, it's just two of them right now. Hi, people. Um, and everyone else watching now, watching later, people who engage, people who sub, people who hit me up on the DMs. It's you guys who make it happen in a deeper way, who make it that much more meaningful. And I want to thank you. I really do. It's you guys are also creating this hub, right? I just made the channel. You guys are the ones who are making it happen, and I appreciate it. Let's move right along here to the chat. Let's see, let's see. Robert says, "A lot of people want to hear what you have to say and your opinion." Well, you know what? I'm thankful for that. I really do believe that all of us have a story to tell. It comes down to whether or not we get up and do it, which is why whenever I'm prompted, either by someone in the chat or by a thought, I say, if you have something to say, find your way to convey it, find your medium, find your form, and do it. I happen to be very blessed to be able to do this and to speak. I've spoken in front of crowds as well, and to be able to write. I've been blessed with these things, and I know that a lot of people are scared. Just earlier, a few hours ago, I gave a lecture on Zoom and had a Q&A on screenwriting and storytelling, and I think it's so lovely. And the host who had me on there to give that talk, he said that later on we'll have a discussion on public speaking. And I was remembering Jerry Seinfeld, who said that they had a poll, and public speaking was the thing that people feared the most. Number two was death. He's like, death is number two? That means for the average person, he says, if you're at a funeral, you'd rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. Now, I've been very, very blessed with not being afraid, per se, of public speaking. And I'm not now sure. It takes time to get into it, and you need to learn what to do, etc., and how to engage with an audience, or to each his own. Same thing here with the camera. I mean, if you go to my earlier videos, it was very, very different. So I'm thankful for you guys. I'm glad that I have things to say. I'm glad that there are those paying attention for whatever reason. That's on you. You decided to come here, and I appreciate it. Late again, says little Andre. No, you're not. You're just fine. Shalom, he says. Shalom, mishpacha. Shalom to you. Yeah, yeah, I know. A wizard or Nazarite is never late. She arrives exactly when they mean to. Yes, I was. Yes, that's correct. Robert, says little Andre. Robert, his opinion about is it people. His opinion about is it people want to hear though. I'm not watching yet. I don't know what you mean. Or are you referring to in general? In general, Robert says, people want to hear Jonathan. I know I do. I know I do. You also. Hey, so do I. That would be kind of cool. Oh, you mean just in general? It's true. My bad. That's nice. Has Jonathan read the chat yet, though? So yeah, I'm doing it now. Oh, Ariel Marshall is here as well. Hey, Ariel, good to see you. I missed your name earlier when I was scrolling down, yelling out the names. Good to see you here, man. Good to see you. The Ashkenazi Nazarite, the Sephardic Nazarite. With the whole Ashkenazi Sfaradi thing, and I think I may have mentioned this in the past, I grew up in a house where that wasn't even a thing. And then when we got to grade school, us boys, right, the four boys, we came home and we were like, Ima, Abba, what's an Ashkenazi? What's a Sfaradi? Because when my parents were in the States, a Jew was a Jew was a Jew, and they didn't nitpick into the different traditions and the different, a Jew is a Jew is a Jew. But when we arrived here, there started to be all of the marginalizing, let's say, and differentiation and all of that picking apart of, oh, you come from here, oh, you come from there, never ends. Robert says Pinky Hurwitz doesn't mind her privacy being out there. No, you know what? Because she's just a bitch. Little Andre says, I had a question about hair for Jonathan last time, though, but there were so many people in the chat I was chatting with, I completely forgot. Jonathan, did you notice if your hair grew longer in the Netherlands than in Israel or not? No, I haven't noticed. I think it's growing at the same pace. Somebody at work recently looked at me and he said, "Say, is your hair still growing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I have new hair growing all the time. I always have, some frizz, and I always have baby dreads forming, squiggles and kinks and knots forming." And he said, "It's interesting how certain hair stops, right? The hair on your arms and your legs, but the hair on your head can keep on going." And I agree, it really is a wonder. Now, I don't know when it will stop, if it will stop ever. As long as God can grow it, as far as I'm concerned, that's how long it should be. That's what I'm gonna say, right? Like the song in hair. So no, I didn't notice, but I do notice, I suppose, that when I treat it right, then it grows, let's say, in a healthier manner, something like that. But as for the length, no, I didn't notice if it grows more here or there. Also, I was in the Netherlands for 3 years, but I've only been back for 6 months, so we'll see. Hair grows faster in colder places, is what I've noticed. Oh, that's interesting. I maybe I will know. I don't know. Robert, huh? Where's Craig Lease? Did I accidentally block him in the chat? So no, oh, Spooky, hey, how you doing, man? So no, you didn't block him. I was just reading a comment that he left. He wasn't in the chat. Shalom, Jonathan. Shalom to you, Spooky. How spooky of you to be here. No, you didn't. I was just saying everyone subscribe to Little Andre, Ben Andre. Spooky says, Shalom, Robert. Shalom, Little Andre. Spooky's in his house. It's true. He is. Aren't we all? Do we take up too much of your time with questions? No, this is part of what I'm here for. It's usually I'll speak, I'll say my piece, blah, 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 whatever it is for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes. But what I want what I want to do more than that is be engaged, because when I press go live and I start the live stream, I may have some bullet points or a few sentences or an idea of what I have to say, but when I'm going through the chat, that's completely spontaneous. I have no bullet point, nor a sentence or two, nor an idea of what you guys and gals are about to type. So, if anything, it is the most stimulating and it's the most desired way of engaging and having the channel, because it allows me to be on the spot, which I love, and it allows me to experience that rawness, because even though at any given moment, because I don't have a script, even if I have a bullet point or two, a sentence or two, or an idea, it's still very, very raw. Whenever I press go live, it's very raw, and that's how I want it. But it's even more so that way when I don't even have an idea of what's about to come up, and I'm scrolling down here and it just pops up, and I need to contend with it right then and there. Or sometimes I'll say I don't know, I'll check it out, it's a good question, we'll see later. Much like Robert asked about Zedesh, is she from Amalek? I looked briefly. I'll mention. I looked briefly. There is no mention of her genealogy being from the Amaleki people, but there is a mention of her root spiritual source, much like Haman's, of being from Amalek. The spiritual root of Amalek is one which is supposed to be taken away from the world, right? What does God tell Joshua? What does God tell what does God tell Moses to tell Joshua? That he will eradicate the memory of Amalek from under the sky. Meaning that above the sky, and I mean the sky conceptually, right? In the outer realms, in the spiritual worlds, that's a different story. And there is a place, right? In that place where all is one, where there's a root that hasn't branched out yet into good and evil, positive, negative, yin, yang, yes, no, Amalek and Israel, right? Amalek, the Gematria, if Yodidiah were here, he would plot the Gematria, or not, well, let's put it this way. The Gematria of Amalek is Hasafek, the doubt. And in some way, Amalek represents the doubt, because Amalek actually in the Bible attacks Israel without being provoked. Israel are at Refidim, Amalek shows up and does battle with them, unprovoked, seemingly, right, according to the Bible. And it represents this existential doubt or angst or burden that we carry, that is the mere lot of anyone who comes into the world, regardless of whether they are good or they are bad, they are this or that, they are from this location or that location, this nationality, that skin color, whatever it is. There is a kind of existential human burden which we all carry, regardless of our circumstances, our particular conditions in life. The condition is that of you're gonna die, and you're not gonna, and there'll be some pain and suffering along the way. Everybody is like that. Everybody suffers to some degree, some more than others. Amalek represents that idea of kind of, dare I say, that potential for nihilism. That is, that is the great doubt of what if it's all a bunch of crap? What if life has no meaning? What are we doing in this grotesque puppet show? Right? That can cause a person to go off the rails and to become very, well, bitter and sad and cruel and malevolent eventually. Because if there's no meaning to my life, why should anyone else have meaning either? There is no meaning. And I won't stand for people who say there is meaning, and I will go against them. And so, from just like an existential kind of doubt, it becomes a real, down the line, it has the potential of becoming a real serious bitterness that turns into real violence. So, Zeresh and Amalek in this world It's that what's called klipat Amalek, the husk of Amalek, that thing which needs to be taken apart, right? That thing which on the one hand guards the fruit, but on the other hand, it stops you from eating it. So you need to break through it in order to reach the fruit, right? You need to remove the husk in order to reach the actual sustaining nourishment. But there is that point where Amalek and Israel are one. But it does not exist in this world. In this world, we are commanded to eradicate and remove the memory of Amalek, even the mere memory. It needs to be that surgical. And contrary-wise, to the degree that we eradicate Amalek's mere memory in this world as a commandment, right? Then on the other hand, Amalek's spiritual root, because of our doing here, becomes more pronounced. That place where it's one, where it doesn't branch off yet into good and evil, right? That top of the pyramid where there is no good and evil. It's just the top. It's all one. Amalek is there too. The potential for Amalek is there, and then when it comes down, then it differentiates and separates to good and evil. Okay, let's continue here. Anyway, says little Andre, if you read the chat yet, something interesting, cool I realized with the name Daniel last time is that Daniel means judge of or from Elohim. Well, Daniel is more along the lines of God is my judge, but I hear what you're saying. And Shimshon was a judge and from the tribe of Dan. Yes, that is correct. That's correct. That's a nice little one. Yeah, that's true. It was. He was, that is. Although some people say that Samson had a messianic thing about him, I've mentioned this in the past, and that he was Dan on one side of the family and Yehuda on the other side of the family. So he was the judge Nazarite of Dan, and that's where he grew up, according to the book of Judges. But he also had the potential of being a Messiah. I I didn't hear that until a few months ago. But if indeed he did have some genetic or a familial connection to Yehuda, that could very well be the case. And we know that it's, the first King Messiah was from Benjamin. You don't have to be from Yehuda. Even now. Okay, let's see. Robert, little Andre says to Robert, but why? I have no videos. Did you also say people should subscribe to Craig Lease, if I'm understanding correctly? Shalom, Spooky. Sorry I was typing earlier, said little Andre. I'm not sure which one he meant, but I'm sure he answered you. Robert says, what is Deuteronomy 16:14 talking about? All right, let's read it quickly. Deuteronomy 16:14. V'samachta bechagecha. Yes, it's speaking of the holiday of Sukkot, the festival of tabernacles, in the time of in the oral tradition and in the Torah, the Chag Sukkot, the festival of Sukkot, is simply known as Chag. So when it says V'samachta bechagecha, it means be joyous in your holiday of Sukkot. To this day, when we say the prayers of Sukkot and when we sanctify the day, we call it Zman Simchatenu, the time of our jubilation, the time of our joy. Right? The Passover is known as the time of our redemption, and the Shavuot, Pentecost, is known as the time of the giving of our Torah. But Sukkot is simply a time of joy, and I've spoken of it before. Only saw your comment now, says little Andre. Also, says little Robert. Little Robert. Also, says Robert, people ask a lot what happened to Zedesh. Well, I think Zedesh lived. She lost a lot of her boys and her man, but she lived, as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't really say what happened to her. Haman, cursed be him, wife and his sons, and him were hung from the gallows, but don't say what happened to her. And I think I know why it don't say, because God wanted... Wait, where were we? Because God wanted her to see what she had planned from her own mind for Mordechai, and the Jews fell upon her sons. Right, so she she basically witnessed that which she sought to bring about her enemies. So yeah, I hear you. The poetic justice, right? Poetic justice. Ariel says, cool, then I want to ask about the rabbi that used to shoot lasers out of his eyes before coffee was invented. Say what? You like that? In recent years, I have mostly been involved in forestry, and that could really help. All right. Okay. The rabbi that used to shoot lasers out of his eyes before coffee was invented. Could you please elaborate? I have no idea what you're talking about. Unless you're talking about a rabbi that's named Eliezer and nicknamed Laser, there are many Rabbi Lasers, but they don't shoot lasers from their eyes. And like in Guardians of the Galaxy, Taserface doesn't shoot tasers from his face. It's metaphorical, right? My woman is laughing here. I live to make that woman laugh. I really, really do. Robert Sukkot. So yeah, little Andre answered you before I answered you. Little Andre, thanks, says Robert. By the way, says little Andre. Sure? Okay. Little Andre, by the way, who's the Sephardic Nazarite you mentioned earlier? I feel like I have a connection with the Sfaradim. Okay, I guess we're okay. So hey, I'm at the end of the chat now. I'm at the end of this chat. I am gonna just wait a moment here to see if Robert answers little Andre or if little Andre continues after his anyway. And I'm also waiting for Ariel Marshall to explain about the lasers from the eyes. What? Could you please explain? Because if you're talking about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, that looked at a man and he was burned, if that is the case. So I'm waiting to see if that's the case. But if there is no answer in a minute or two, because I don't want all the dead airspace, I don't want to waste your time. I want to give you my full attention, and I don't want to waste your time with dead airspace. So either I'll read another comment from the ones that came in recently, or if there's something in the chat. Oh, okay. Robert Harrison says the Essene Nazarite John Smith might be living in a shack right now by himself. Wow. Faster, not longer, little Andre says. Meant to ask if your hair grew faster. So no, from what I've gathered, it has not grown faster. It grows at the same pace. It was going at the same pace. But let's see. The Essene Nazarite John Smith. I remember John Smith. Yeah, he used to frequent the channel. He might be living in a shack right now by himself. Well, I'll tell you, man, to live off the grid by yourself in a shack, that takes dedication. And I'm sure that there's a lot to be gained from living that kind of ascetic life. There is so much to that kind of hitbodedut that is ongoing and ever present. You need to contend with yourself, and you need to get to know yourself. And it's also about getting to know the world around you and nature. I'm sure that if he is doing that, that he is in meditation for hours and hours. It's such a trip. It really is. It's like living out a hitbodedut. That's serious. That's some serious. Is it still snowing? Nice, nice. Big fluffy flakes. You're a fluffy flake. Um, oh, I wasn't talking about anyone crazy I know. I just wanted to say Sephardic Nazarite. Meditating on Torah day and night, said Robert Harrison. Oh, for sure. To meditate on the Torah day and night. V'hagita bo yomam v'layla. Something that I love to do whenever it happens that I do it is to connect the night and the day in the sunrise with Torah, and to connect the day in the night during sundown with Torah. There are times when I do it real consciously. If I happen to notice that the sun is going down, I'll do something. If I happen to notice the sun going up whenever I'm around at sunrise, and it's not a lot of times, but sometimes, like in the winter, let's put it this way. Sometimes, if I'm not too pressed for time to get everything ready and the kids to school and all that in the a.m., and I notice that the sun is rising, there'll be a part of me that either speaks something or sort of thinks something, right? Sending out those positive vibes, if not verbalizing them, and understanding that there's a shift that's happening right now from one revelation to the other, right? From Chesed to Gvura, from Gvura to Chesed. The way that the world is now conducting itself It's down a different sort of divine revelation, a different sort of channel of energy. And to notice this and to connect it with Torah or with prayer is to align yourself with that shift from one channel to the next and to help it come into your life with that with God being let's say with you bringing God into the picture in a very conscious and mindful sort of way. So let's see. Ariel says, yes, I think I was talking about him. Can't we at least pretend he shot lasers if I misunderstood? Well, sure, we can pretend. Okay. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was hidden away from the Romans with Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Elazar, his son, in a cave for, oh, how long was it? 12, 13 years? How long was Rabbi Shimon in the cave? 14 years, 13 years. So Rabbi Shimon, according to the tradition, Rabbi Shimon and his son were in a cave for 13 years, hiding from the Romans, and right at the time of the Second Temple. And there was a spring there, and there was a carob tree, and they would simply learn Torah day and night. And then, when it was time for them to leave the cave, I've told the story before, and I thank you for bringing it up. When it was time for Rabbi Shimon and his boy to leave the cave, they saw someone, they happened across someone who was simply working the land, right? A farmer, a man of agriculture, a dude, just doing his thing and working the land. And it said, Natan bo einav v'na'asa gal atzamot. That Rabbi Shimon focused his view, let's say, on that man. He gave his eyes to him, it says, or his eyes were upon him, and he became a heap of bones, right? In other words, Rabbi Shimon looked at him and disintegrated the guy, turned him into a pile of bones. Now, there are different explanations of this. The more famous one that I've heard is that after 13 years of being completely immersed in Torah, day and night, and learning and learning and learning, and going deeper and deeper into the lore of the 10 Sfirot and their studies, and getting all those divine revelations which are precisely not of this world. When he came outside and he saw somebody who is in this world and working the land, there was such a, let's say, cognitive dissonance between what he had just finished experiencing in the cave and between what he was seeing in actual reality, physical reality, in its pure physical working the land form, right? Working the earth, right, toiling in the ground in order to grow nourishment for sustenance of the material side and the animal side and the animal soul, right, which gains the food. He couldn't take that. There was something there, a dissonance there, a gap there that was so significant that Rabbi Shimon simply looked at the guy and he sort of focused on him and he turned him into a pile of bones. He basically took away his physical being. He killed him with his sight. There are different interpretations. I heard one or two others over the years. One of them being kind of aligned with that one, which is that he gave that person working the land, he gave him, Rabbi Shimon gave that person for a split second his own sight. Meaning, for a split second, that man, that simple man working the land, looked at the world through the eyes of Rabbi Shimon. And he saw creation as Rabbi Shimon does. And because of that, it blew his mind, let's say, so much that his very physical being was lifted out of existence, and all that was left, right? He died, and all that was left is a pile of bones because he was sort of carried away through that sight. Something like that. Something like that. Um, and there probably is another one. If I think of another interpretation that I've heard over the years, then I will say it. But I don't think I'll remember it well, even if I do. But look it up. There are other ways of interpreting it, but I just don't remember them offhand right now. Okay, let's see. Robert, who's John Smith? So, little Andre, John Smith used to frequent the channel, as I said. That's not good, though. One can become crazy by living alone too long. Well, too long, perhaps. First of all, there are some people, like Eliyahu on the top of the mountain, right? And like many others before and after him, the gurus on the mountain, let's say, for better or worse, or the daughter of Yiftach, the judge, who went away into seclusion. There are people who can take it. There are people who can take it, right? The Mosaic kind of people who can be on the top of the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights without eating and drinking, so to speak, who can take that in and live to tell the tale. And others might just go, well, I'm loath to say crazy, but I'll use your terminology, yeah, to become crazy, living alone too long, because we need human interaction. It's part of it's ingrained in our very being. At least most of us need human interaction. That's part of, that's in part what's been so difficult, I'm sure, for a lot of lonely people during this COVID time. It's even lonelier than usual. Robert says, I wouldn't do this, but it is against the Torah to eat mushrooms and meditate on Torah. I don't know why I ask this. What? I don't understand. I wouldn't do this, but oh, is it against Torah? Well, let's put it this way. I have that video on psychedelics and spirituality. My take on it, my take on it. First of all, no, it's not against the Torah to do it. Now, would the Torah agree with someone who does it all the time? Not necessarily. With the way of the Torah, is it the spirit of Torah, right? Does it align with somebody who does that on a regular basis and who otherwise does not meditate? Maybe not. But certainly, I have taken mushrooms and meditated and learned, um, and I did not see anything wrong with it. Nothing, nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with it. But my view and my rule of thumb is that the bulk, 90 something percent, as far as I'm concerned, of your psychedelic experiences should be induced through Torah, through study, through prayer, through meditation, through hitbodedut, right, seclusion, and through your own doing, rather than something which you ingest or smoke or otherwise take in. So even though there is room for it, I don't think that it should be the way that it's done. I think it should be I don't think it should be the norm. I think it should be the exception and not the norm, right? Outside of the general mode of conduct and being. It's like the way to behave is that you yourself, because what is psychedelic? Psychedelic literally means mind expanding or mind expansion. Your mind should be expanded because of your actions. Any person can just eat 5 grams of dried mushrooms or this many grams of truffles or take a tab of acid or salvia or whatever and have a psychedelic experience. First of all, you could have that, and then when the drug wears off, or the plant, when it wears off, basically it would come and go, right? Easy come, easy go, and nothing will remain of it. Or it can really affect you, and it can be long-term effect, especially with psilocybin. You could have some serious positive long-term effects. I'm not doubting that for a second. I know, I've done. But it shouldn't be the bulk of your experiences because you are that mind, and the mushroom is a great bridge, right, between the physical and the spiritual, let's say. But it shouldn't be the only bridge. You should build many other bridges through Torah, commandments, and covenant. And if you want to do mushrooms every now and then and reach other places in a different way, definitely. And I don't think that it's against Torah. I think it would be against the Torah to do it every day and to only exclusively learn Torah when you're high on this or that or the other. That I think would be kind of not in the spirit of Torah, if not actually against. Certainly not in the spirit of Torah. Little Andre says, interesting side note. I just ended that comment with 101 digits left, rule 101. Don't live alone too long. Well, that reminds me of Room 101 in 1984. My word. Robert says about John Smith, I presume he was very big on Yonathan's channel. He took a Nazarite vow and he followed the Essene path. Yeah, I learned a lot about the Essene way through John Smith. definitely. Spooky says, Shalom again, little. Yeah, I had to bounce, but I'm back now. Welcome back. Andre says, Robert says to little Andre, Bible says it's not good for man to be alone. Yeah, lo tov heyota adam levado. It's true. It's true. Little Andre says to Robert, the Torah doesn't say it's wrong to do that, right? So you could. Hey, the vegan Nazarite is here. Look at that. Took a while to find the channel again. So the vegan Nazarite reached out to me through Reddit in the last couple of days. I am thankful and lucky to have him send. He sent me his book and in PDF form. Now I don't know if you're a vegan Nazarite. I don't know if you're offering it for sale anywhere, but people, get in touch with the vegan Nazarite. He recently posted an hour-long, just in recent December, about a month ago, just over a month ago, he posted an hour-long video titled "The Ways of the Nazarite." Right, so he is a Messianic Nazarite, and he and he I didn't see the full hour, but he speaks from the heart. There's no doubt about that. And as a Messianic Nazarite goes, he seems to be fully committed, ready to admit his faults, ready to admit his false beginnings or faulty beginnings, and ready to take it on and grab life by the cojones. So if you're into the Messianic teachings of Yeshua, and if you're into the Nazarite vow, definitely check out the Vegan Nazarite. Subscribe to his channel. Find him on Reddit. He's going to be posting Bible studies, I'm thinking, on Reddit, and videos on his channel. Continuing, right? He has a few videos there already, so check it out if you're into it. So shalom to you. Took a while to find the channel. Yeah, man, but I'm so thankful that you found the channel again and that we can be in touch. Really, really. Wow, the vegan Nazarite is back, says Robert. Indeed. Little Andre says, if Elohim didn't want humans to eat it, he wouldn't have created it, where animals can also reach it and eat it. I concur. Then it's just a question of moderation, of doing it in a way which is conducive to life and to mind expansion in a more, let's say, kosher way, rather than simply relying on herb or mushrooms or acid or salvia or whatever to get you there. You should be getting there on your own. And if every now and then you want to do that, well, then that's all well and good. Also, in my experience, which is not much, but in my experience, living that kind of mind expanding life and striving to live and lead a more righteous life, it will help you when in those vulnerable psychedelic states induced by herb or mushrooms, etc. It will help you to avoid the bad trips, because even if you do deal with some demons and skeletons in your closet or whatnot, past trauma, it will be from a place which is grounded in Torah and in righteousness and in a path of commandments. And in doing that, it can help orient you even when you are expanding your mind through things like herb and psilocybin, mushrooms. But that only has been my experience, and I can't say what your experience would be. I mean, to quote Robert Terrence, not Robert Terrence McKenna, he said, "Look, if you take 5 grams of dried mushrooms, you're going to see things that no one has ever seen before and will ever see again. That's it. It's going to be something unique to you that no one has ever experienced and no one will ever experience again." So there's a lot there. There's a great responsibility there, I think. Um, Robert says, that's right, I remember seeing in his scenes, plural, yes, plural, on his previous channel. Yeah, it's true. Not sure what you mean. Well, what do you mean, vegan Nazarite? Are you talking about what I said or what someone else said? Spooky, shalom again, says little Andre. He said, and little Andre says, how do you say again in Hebrew? It's shuv, shin vav vet, shuv. That's how you say again. Little Andre, sorry, I'm still learning, generally speaking. Ariel says, mushrooms may not be able to make you shoot lasers out your eyes, but they can certainly distort reality through your eyes and generate highly spiritual experiences. Yes, I concur. They really can. Amazing things. Hey, look at that. The vegan Nazarite is here too. Yes. says little Andre. The Vegan Nazarite says, I'm already subscribed, all good there. But when the channel was shut down, took a while to find it again. Yes, because for a few weeks, or maybe close to like a month and a half, I had a channel in Hebrew because the channel was terminated a day after we arrived in Israel. And I said to myself, well, if I'm going to start something from scratch and I'm in Israel, back in Israel, I might as well do it in Hebrew. And then after a few weeks, or maybe a month and a half, or more, who knows, I saw that I simply wasn't as invested in the Hebrew one. And it was a little bit discouraging to have to start from scratch. Not that I mind, because I started this one in English from scratch, but I wanted to gather around the people that I had. I didn't want to, let's say, alienate them by disconnecting simply because I wanted to do it in Hebrew. Furthermore, when I asked my woman about it, she said, yeah, obviously you want to do it in English because you can reach more people that way. A lot more people know and listen and understand English. And Hebrew is understood and spoken by a very, very small percentage of the world compared to English. Also, I said to her right then when we were talking about it, remembering the last broadcast I had on my old channel where we had a Christian and a Muslim and a Hebrew, a Messianic and a Scene, we had all kinds of people there. I would not be able, basically, to have that kind of eclectic uh, coming together of people in the Hebrew channel. It would have to be all kinds of things would have to happen for that to occur. Whereas when I'm broadcasting in English, it can happen really organically, really quickly too, as we've already seen in this new channel where it's happened. And little Andre or Robert have already commented on this. That yeah, we have people from all different faiths and walks of life coming together in this channel to learn and to uh, and to be and to do good, and to learn, well, to learn and to give value to each other. All right, let's see. I'm starting to feel tired, and it's been over an hour. My word. Let's see. By the way, Daniel Hanavi was a vegetarian vegan too. Yes, he was, and he asked the servant of King Nebuchadnezzar to not give him the bread and the wine right from the king, or right, to not give him what was given from the king, but to give him, only what did he ask for? I don't recall. Was it grains and seeds? I don't recall. I think some sort of seeds. I don't remember the precise wording. Ariel says, I find it interesting how more than one person can have exactly the same hallucination in exactly the same place at exactly the same time. Well, see, some people would disagree and say it's not possible to have the exact same hallucination. But I mean, it might be done. You might be able to do that. Robert says, I'm surprised that most, not all, Nazarites are vegan. Well, why does it surprise you? It makes perfect sense to me. Or is the surprise that it's most as opposed to all of them? Or is it simply, oh, that most, okay, so I see, you worded it that way. So you're surprised that most of them and not all of them are vegan. So you're saying the surprise is that you think that all of them ought to be vegan. Is that it? The Vegan Nazarite says it's on Amazon, but free now on Kindle. It's called Dawn of Disclosure. So yeah, so I received it today on PDF. If you people are interested in the Vegan Nazarite's experiences, and I'm thinking it pertains to his vow, but I'm not completely sure. So check it out. Check out the book Dawn of Disclosure on Amazon by the Vegan Nazarite, and support him if you want, whether it's free or whether it's not. Go for it. He was kind enough to want to send it to me, a physical copy, but I told him I'd rather have it on PDF. Hey, 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 Yodidyao is here. Yodidyao is in his house, says Robert. Yes, yes, yes. Derech Agav. Well, Derech Hagav. Hagav means the back. Agav means the means meanwhile, or on the let's say. Derech Agav, by the way, along the path. I started walking in nature again yesterday, but not bare feet as I always used to because I loved it. I'm still getting used to it again. So wait, you weren't barefoot this time, right? You started wearing shoes again a couple of months ago, which is interesting. So I see that you're still doing it. That's cool. The vegan Nazarite says third the Torah's third command is to eat vegetables, fruit, and nuts. Right after be fruitful and multiply and stay away from the tree of knowledge. Correct, correct. Yodidiao says, just saying hi, I'm watching my grandpa die. Do you mean you're physically watching him and you know that he is about to leave this world? Or is he ill? Or is it just a euphemism for something? Or are you. I'm curious. But okay, just saying hi. Hi, Odidiao. Thank you for dropping by, whether it's for a moment or for the entire broadcast. Little Andre says, also felt the clay between my feet yesterday. I loved it. So, what kind of clay are we talking about? Much prayers to you, Sean, indeed. Little Andre asked Didiao if you learn. Well, I'm assuming, are you learning? Are you learning German? I think that's what he asked him here. Yo, Didiao, I just saw that now. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to hear that too. Um, and there's not much more to say. When a person is on their deathbed, what are you going to say? I hope that he led a full and rich life, and I hope that if he is literally on his deathbed, that if he is able to see and if he is able to sense what's going on around him, that it's peaceful, right? That he is experiencing a peaceful atmosphere and that he is leaving this world in peace. What more can you wish for a person who is about to depart, but that it happens in peace and in tranquility, right? Without pain, God willing. Spooky says it makes sense that all Nazarites should be vegan in order to separate themselves from death more so. Yeah, that's also what I would say. Though it's again not commanded, but it's definitely something that I would think as well, and it's part of what guided me to veganism. Whereas before the vow, I was a vegetarian. Ariel says, I can testify to the accuracy of my previous statement. Hallucinations are not always personal. Well, obviously, if you have, you have your experience and other things you've heard of, I'm sure. I suppose that depending on the circumstances and the conditions under which a couple or more people are hallucinating, that you can have the same type of hallucination. So I can see that, yeah. I can see that. Although I think that even if it can be somewhat similar, it still won't be exactly the same because it's very much a projection of our own, uh, well, our psyche, and it's whatever unconscious, subconscious, whatever it is. I don't know, but it's being projected and filtered through our being, and as such, it's highly subjective to our personal experience at the time. But I can understand what you mean. Robert, I'm not a vegan, says little Andre, but most of the time I'm a vegetarian. Very good, he says, Spooky says. Robert says, I think Nazirs are so disciplined with the vow, not partaking in stuff, it makes the easier to be vegan with not only not eating meat, but staying away from anything of an animal. Wow. Yeah, I was speaking at work today to someone who was a vegetarian for several years, and she eats meat again now. And she said, even when I was a vegetarian, I could stop eating meat without a problem. I could not stop eating dairy. So I hear that. I said, yeah, I haven't encountered something, not that I've been looking, right? But I haven't encountered something that adequately replaced cheese and butter. I'm not looking either, like I said. I'm not looking specifically for vegan things to completely and totally taste like dairy. I know from the get go that vegan imitations, even the best vegan creations, will not hold a candle to their animal or animal byproduct counterparts. So Little Andre says, I am only a pescatarian. I'll never stop eating fish. Okay, cool. There's some really tasty fish out there, man. I mean, I loved having tuna on Shabbos. As I've mentioned many times, when I was doing my gradual breaking away from animal products, tuna on the Sabbath, on the morning of the Sabbath, was something that I was looking forward to all the time until I took it off the menu. It was something that I would keep I would not eat it throughout the whole week. I would not eat it on Friday night. I would leave the tuna, right? Tuna fish or salmon for the morning of Shabbat, for the second meal, Seudah Shniya. And oh, how I would rejoice slicing up a fat piece of challah and slathering it with some hummus and some spices and putting the tuna fish on there, just looking at it and then yeah, for sure. Robert says, yesterday on Jonathan's video at the hour mark 153 to 154 is the reason why Yeshua came, bridging the gap, just saying. Right, so Robert made that comment when I was talking about how there will always be a divide between creator and creation. There will always be a gap, unbridgeable, right? Ungappable, or not unbridgeable, right? You can't fully traverse that chasm that lies between creator and creation. And he claims that Yeshua came into the world precisely in order to bridge that gap, to which I answered, yeah, that's what a follower of Yeshua would say. I would expect nothing else or short of that. I can definitely see how those who follow Yeshua, me not being among them, would say that, but I still think that's not the case. That's just me. Ariel says, sorry to hear about your grandfather, wishing him well. I do too. I wish him well. If he's supposed to be leaving now, like I said, may he leave the world in peace and tranquility, having lived a rich and fulfilling life. Hmm. Little Andre says, by the way, I'm trying to reconnect with my feminine side more. So I think you mentioned that on Monday, whereupon I mentioned that I'm hoping to do the same. And I quoted the Tao Te Ching, right? That says that if you are more feminine and you are able to receive more and you act as a valley, you will be able to hold the world entire. And if you humble yourself and you are able to carry a burden and receive it, you will always be standing upright. You will always be right in fullness. Same here, little Andre, says Ariel. On the other hand, Sean Hurwitz can cook meat like crazy. Yeah, my brother who hunts his own meat and who dresses it and preps it and freezes it and does all that. I'm eating hummus and pita right now, says Spooky. That's very cool. Little Andre says, Avril Lavigne, I've listened to since before I was a teenager, really helped me a lot with that personally. So, hey, funny you should mention my brother Sean and Avril Lavigne. As I've mentioned, my brother auditioned for her. He didn't get that gig, but he auditioned to be her guitarist years and years ago. So let's see. I've never really listened to her stuff. I think that if I was going to go with my feminine side nowadays, I would pick up a Taylor Swift album. I think that's what I would do. And I'm only saying that because someone, again, at work, somebody recommended a couple of albums of hers. I've only ever listened to her singles, and that I think that's what I would go with. With Cornish and pickles. Oh, Cornish. Oh, because Cornish. I'm assuming it's Cornish. Spooky that with Cornish pickles, great combination with hummus. Oh, speaking of pickles, so vegan Nazarite, if you're still on, I left a comment regarding industrial vinegar on your channel, right on the video, on your recent video, and I'll also say it here. For a few weeks. I mean, this was a few months ago. I think back in the Netherlands. For a few weeks, I was heavily into investigating industrial vinegar as opposed to other types of vinegar, right? Because there's rice vinegar, and there is sherry vinegar, and there is apple cider vinegar, there's distilled white vinegar, there's white wine vinegar, there's red wine vinegar, and a couple of others. The only vinegar that is prohibited for a Nazarite is a vinegar that has its origin in grapes. I, as some of you who followed me may know, for many years I abstained from anything that had vinegar in its ingredients list. And only much later, when I decided, based on something that I read or heard, or it came to me, I don't recall how it came about, I was like, wait, it doesn't make sense. If the Nazarite is supposed to abstain from grapes and grape products, and in the Torah it says that vinegar made of strong drink having to do with wine, and vinegar made of wine is prohibited, the other types of vinegar that are based on grains or on other things, those might be permissible. I should not be abstaining from all vinegar if it's not necessary. Furthermore, I can say that if there is usually, unless I'm in Europe, usually the run-of-the-mill mainstream vinegar which is used in food is mostly from grains and not from grapes. And that's something that I can count on because I did actually check it out. And I even made a couple of calls to companies to ask them what their vinegar is made of. The vinegar that's in their ingredients list, what is it made of? And I found that it wasn't grapes. And that's when I decided to stop ruling out all vinegar and to focus only on grape vinegar, wine vinegar. So I won't have white wine vinegar. I won't have the red wine. I won't have balsamic vinegar, I think is also from grapes. But other types of vinegar, like the regular run-of-the-mill industrial acetic acid and water type of vinegar from grains and stuff, I can have. That was a wonderful revelation for me because that meant a lot more foods opening up to me once again. So I left that comment for the vegan Nazarite on his channel. So so you are here. Really is also to abstain from all forms of vinegar and acetic acid. So yes. So yeah, you also abstain from right. So I did the same thing just to be safe. I agree. I did that for many years. I did it for like, I mean, I've been on this vow for what? It's my 12th or 13 years, something like that. 12 years? Yeah, I think I'm in my 12th year. No, I'm in my 13th year, I think. At any rate, something like that. And for about a decade out of that time, I abstained from any and all vinegar just to be on the safe side. But it made it a lot more difficult, let's say, for my woman to find things that she can prep for me, vegan or otherwise, because a lot of things have vinegar in them. And for a long, long time, it had to take her that much more time to find things for me and make things for me. I mean, I also do cook, but she's so much better at it naturally. So she likes feeding me and the kids, you know. She doesn't want to make separate meals all the time, so she would look for things without vinegar, which was difficult. So now I ask if it says vinegar, right, and it's something in Israel that's made in Israel, I can bank on the fact that it's not made of wine or grapes. But if I'm in Europe, I would ask, or if it says, obviously, if it says that it's vinegar made of wine, chometz ben yain, then obviously I don't drink it or consume it. But I decided that I can take on, let's say, the risk because a company that makes vinegar from wine will want to broadcast it because it's a lot more prestigious and they can charge more for the product if you see vinegar of wine, wine vinegar, in the list of ingredients, which is why I can do that. But I completely understand you wanting to be on the safe side. I did it for like a decade or more. I know what that's about. Go with that. But if at any point you feel that you want to do precisely what the Torah says instead of taking on more, then much like the vegan does not have to be vegan, much like a Nazarite does not have to be vegan, it's simply it makes a lot of sense, but it's not a commandment for the Nazarite. In that same way, you don't have to abstain from any and all vinegars. You need to abstain from vinegar of grape origin. That is it. Other things you can take on yourself, much as I did, and much like many others do, and that's cool. And that will be a good thing because it means that you are completely safe. But just so you know, there is that fermentation alone does not disqualify the vinegar in question from being consumed, only if it is from grape source. All right, let's continue. Let's continue here. Where were we? Oh, wow, a lot of things in the chat, and it's almost an hour and a half. I'm gonna go soon. I can feel my voice already starting to be affected by all of the blah blah blah. I'm so happy you people are here. I take such pleasure, and it's such an honor to have you people here take time out of your day, your night, to invest that time in me, so to speak, and in this lovely little group that we have here, this little study hub, as someone put it, a hub. I really appreciate it. Your time and your kind attention, they mean the world to me, and I am thankful. Let's keep it on, keep on. In regards to being a pescatarian currently, not says Ariel, not sure I want to get more in touch with my feminine side currently. I hear you. Little Andre, yeah, I know your brother almost worked for her. He remembers, look at that. Ariel, have to do with it? What? Not sure about that. Spooky says, according to the Evyonim, the Ebionites, Yeshua came to end the animal sacrifices, and in their gospel, he refuses to eat the paschal lamb, and John the Baptist ate cakes and wild honey, not locusts. Okay. Oh no, it has nothing to do with it. I just wanted to say that earlier. Okay, so it has nothing to do with it. Um, Spooky says to Little, check out Mezzy Star. Definitely check them out. Good call. Good songs to get in touch with your feminine side by them. Fade Into You. Yes, man. Fade Into You. That's a classic. And Look On Down from the Bridge, which I probably heard, but I don't recall. Oregon Freebird. Hi, Karen. How you doing? I live only a mile from the ocean, so we eat lots of fish here. Smoked salmon is my favorite. We even what? The seaweed just signed on. Too many meetings today. Hey, good for you. Do your thing. Do your work, do your job. It's all good. Little Andre, Spooky says, also check out Lana Del Rey's song Summertime Sadness. Spooky, interesting, says Little Andre. Okay, thanks for the vinegar tip, says the vegan Nazarite. Right, only tips. Obviously, you don't have to take it. You can do your own research. But as I say, you want to be safe? Be safe. It's the right thing to do if that's what you want to do. I did it for many years and I didn't regret it for a second. I don't even remember what brought about the change. I think it was something intuitive when I realized that there are more types of vinegar that are being used in mainstream industrial cookery, right, in the food industry, than wine vinegar. And that wine vinegar is the exception and not the rule in these days. I knew some of that though, says little Andre. Enjoy, says Spooky. Enjoy indeed. Why no grapes for Nazarites? I never understood. Well, the bottom line is that the grapes signify a divine revelation known as the left hand or limitation, narrowness, wrath, judgment. Our sages say that, some of the sages say that the tree of knowledge of good and evil was grapes. And we can see Noah and the downfall of Ham happened because of grapes. And we see Lot and the incestuous thing he had with his daughters because of grapes. Grapes are a twofold thing. On the one hand, they can bring much happiness, and the Psalms, right? The Psalm says that wine will gladden the man of heart and make the face shine more than oil. So we see that there is a gladness to wine. On the other hand, wine is also associated with forgetfulness, with death, with a kind of limitation and narrowness and wrath and anger and laziness. And the prophets many times they say that the Am Israel, right, the people of Israel are like drunks who know not what they're doing. So there are many downsides. And the Nazarite rabbi Rabbi Gavriel, who in the Nazir COIL, by the way, Nazir COIL, I'll put it down here. That's his website, and it has parts of his book, the Israel Nazariteship, Nazirut Israel. He says that the wine that gladdens the heart and that makes the man's face to shine is spiritual wine. It's the type of wine where, speaking of Gimatriot, Yodidiahu is still here, the word yain, wine, and the word sod, secret, have the same Gimatria. With wine, you have the ability to become looser and to, it's not just a social lubricant, it can also be a spiritual lubricant, if you will, and it has the potential of opening up certain channels, which is why on Purim, for instance, you're supposed to consume so much that you become drunk. The only time of the year that you have this sort of commandment to be joyous, and a substrata of the joyfulness is drunkenness, or superstrata. This idea of the wine is associated much more with forgetfulness, laziness, and wrongdoing than it is, and iniquity than it is with joy and gladness. And so the Nazarite man and woman are commanded to abstain not just from wine, but from the very source of wine, from grapes, and from the fruit of the grapes. We can still have the stalk or the leaves and other things, but not the grape, not the fruit, not the progeny of the fruit in the sense of wine, strong drink that has wine, vinegar of wine. So that's why. It's to completely detach yourself from the left side, from the gvura, from judgment, and attach yourself to the middle pillar and to divine harmony, beauty, and mercy. Oregon Freebird Shalom, says Robert. The vegan Nazarite says, really, is to abstain from all forms of vinegar. So yeah, so I read that before, so I'll read it again now. I also abstain from all vinegars just to be safe. Yeah, I hear you. Spooky says to Robert, Robert says to Spooky, God wanted the Nazarite to be set apart and withstain from strong drink. Yes, from wine and strong drink with wine. I see. So grapes are inherently associated with wine. Well, yeah, obviously they are. Ariel says, in Europe, the labels usually say the type of vinegar used in products. Yeah, but wine vinegar is a lot more, from what I've gathered, it's a lot more mainstream and more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's used more in Europe. Little Andre says to Robert, I might address something you said in the comments afterwards. Please remember to check the comments. Oh wow, there's a lot of, oh man. So it's an hour and a half. I think I'm going to say goodbye because I'm feeling I'm feeling the wooziness of tiredness coming on. I'll read a couple more. I want a part of, and this is also what I would do at weddings when when I would be dancing and dancing and dancing, and then I would start to grow tired and aching. That's when I would dance at least a little bit more in order to really drive the point home, where even if I'm physically uncomfortable, I'll still do it for a minute or two, and in doing so, push myself over the edge. And so now, even though I'm tired and I'd like to leave now and continue this on either Friday or Monday as time permits, I want to continue a little bit more, even though I'm tired, in order to push myself over the edge, because I consider this to be a great and wonderful thing, right? This engagement in Torah and in philosophy and theology and all the stuff we're doing here. And in going for even an extra minute or two, it kind of points me in a direction in life where I'm able to take it a bit further. And if I'm able to take it a bit further in this, maybe I will even be able to take it a bit further in things where I am currently more limited. I'm trying to, let's say, train myself to take it a bit further despite my natural physical insufficiency, right? So let's see. Wow, 12 years will be two from me at Passover. Hey, good for you, man. Good for you. The Nazarite vow is so significant, is so important for those who take it. And like you said at the end, I think of your video on the ways of the Nazarite, if you're feeling called to it, don't do it on a whim, don't do it in a frivolous kind of way, but definitely, definitely do it and check it out if you're feeling called to it. That's what I've said from the beginning, and I very much agree. Paul and John the Baptist, New Testament Nazirs. Yes, so I've heard. I can see that how how John the Baptist, Yochanan HaMatbil, the immerser, might be more so, but I can also see from what I was told by Messianics and Christians how Paul might be as well. Ariel says, if someone recently died and you were around, how would you feel about trying to resuscitate them? Well, so Ariel, at least until I was discharged last year, I was a field medic in my youth, right, in my early 20s in mandatory service. Ever since then, for nearly 20 years, I was a medic, a field medic in the reserves. My vow, I try and abstain from death and everything to do with it, but my vow leans more, it's a hybrid, right? And it leans more towards the Samson vow. So Samson was prohibited from partaking of wine and a haircut, but he could be around dead bodies. And it's what's called a Nazirut Shimshon, a Samson Nazariteship. So I've incorporated to some degree parts of the Numbers 6 vow and parts of the Samson vow, and I've put them together. And I've also taken on veganism and stuff, right, as a kind of addendum. So mine is like I pick and choose. I picked things from Numbers. I picked things from Judges. I picked things from my own, let's say, intuition, and I called it my vow, my walk. So how would I feel about resuscitating them? I would immediately do it if I was around, if I was authorized to do so. So I'm not authorized to do it now, but if in my time in the army there would be a need for me to resuscitate, then I would. Interestingly enough, there were two times in life where I almost started CPR, and then I think I mentioned this way back. I almost started CPR twice in my life, and then the person regained consciousness. And both of those times where I was out of the army, I was a civilian, so I didn't really have the authority, let's say, to begin CPR. And nowadays, I don't think I would do it anyway because of legal issues, I suppose. I wouldn't want to do it now. But how would I feel? I would definitely do it without thinking twice because my vow is more of a Samson vow as far as death is concerned. And I decided instead of abstaining from death, should it come to that, I'd rather take the hill that I would die on, so to speak, is that hill of veganism. And instead of abstaining from death, I am embracing life. And that's like the other side of the token, if you will. What was the temple tax? So the temple tax was the tithe. The temple tax was 1/10, a tenth that people would give to the temple, to the priests. Spooky says, reminds me of how Yeshua at one point is said to have stopped drinking wine until the kingdom of heaven is established on earth. So yeah, that was in the Last Supper. And somebody told me that that is where Yeshua took his Nazarite vow. It's like right before he ended his life, he took on the Nazarite vow, and that he kind of alludes to it by saying that he will abstain from that. So if I'm not mistaken, it's in the Last Supper, right? On Leil HaSeder, right before he died, on Passover, that's where he took the Nazarite vow. I mean, I can kind of see how that might be the case. Other people could disagree. I have no real stake in the matter. It could be, it couldn't be. But if he did do it on Passover, I can see why. Because Passover is that time where we triumphed, right? And there was a triumph of life over death, the death of the firstborns, of the firstborn, and the life of Israel, right? Egypt was left burying their dead, while Israel left and made their exodus. And so there's a great uh, there's a great lesson there, right? And what is it that your life is supposed to be, and how do you acquire life? What does liberty mean? What does deliverance mean? What does redemption mean? What does your life mean? Let's say you're free, you're liberated, you've been delivered and redeemed, but for what? It's still on you to make those decisions and understand that now that you are out of Egypt, where is it that you are supposed to be going? So yeah, I can understand why you would take the Nazarite vow on the very eve of Pesach, of Passover. Okay, okay, I'm gonna say goodbye. Whew, this has been so much fun. An hour and 40 minutes almost. God willing, I will see you people, good people, guys and gals, on Friday. I think I'll continue this chat. Let's see how much I have over here. Oh, wow, there's a lot going on here. Oh my God, thank God. Totally, yeah. There's a lot here. I will continue this on Monday. I don't know if I'll have time on Friday. I still have work to do before the month is up, and I want to put a few more hours in on Friday if I can. So I think Monday Eve, I'm going to get back to this chat, but I hope to broadcast the weekly Torah portion on Friday as usual. Until then, I will say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, I appreciate your time, your kind attention, your engagement. Ariel, Jesus. Oh, hey, Jesus. Ariel, Spooky, Jesus, little Andre, the vegan Nazarite. Karen was here, right? Who else was here? Ariel was here. I think that was it. These are the people who were here this evening, right? I think I got everyone. If I didn't, forgive me. And those who showed up, but who were not in the chat. Um, Thank you for being here. People watching now, people watching later. It's so much fun. So much fun to be able to have this discourse with you. I hope and pray that we will be able to not just leave it in the realm and in the ether of the internet, to not just have it be zeros and ones here online on YouTube, but to have all of this have a real practical application in our day to day life, to remember our divinity, to know or understand, or at the very least research on where it is that we come from, where it is that we're going, how we are getting there, right? What are the covenants that we want to walk by? What is the path that we want to go by? What are our pillars? What does the Torah mean to us? What covenants are we looking to take hold of? What is the life that we want to embrace? Until Friday, God willing. I'll see you then. Thank you so much. Still snowing. Laila tov.